And welcome back YouTube to the second part of building the miniature BB. Well, I mean, mini BB, it's no longer a mini. I mean, I went completely out of size and the ship in the end turns out to be 29,000 in volume. At some point it was slightly over 30,000 and but I did manage to scale it down just below 30,000 to 29. So, yeah, that's still not in the range of expecting things of size to be. And yeah, this is also the final part of this. I did skip a lot. So a lot of the in-between testing of guns and stuff like that, placing shieldings, coloring, I skipped all of it because it took me way too long. There gonna still be minor tweaks to the ship, but minor ones. Well, at least I'm hoping on minor ones. As I'm thinking that the ship looks just a bit too flat-sided, so I may add like a bit of a bulge to the sides. I'm not completely sure yet, but most likely the ship will go in the first iteration like this in a campaign if I can spawn it in, because it is 320,000 in materials worth, which kind of fits. I mean, the first BB is at 380, the mini BB is at 280, so this one is 320,000 material, so it's right in between. It's right in between the two, and hopefully that we're gonna have enough material that we can try and spawn this one in as quickly as possible. As I said, a lot of the things got skipped in the video. I mean, the starting parts and the superstructure and stuff like that when I was building, that's all in, but things that takes way too long over time or are way too annoying, I can't post that. It would take, 6-hour video or something. That's unacceptable. Even this one, I think it's at over 40 minutes, so it's already a bit of a size of a video that, yeah. I also didn't place much of any decoration, stairs or doors. I mean, doors are on the superstructure, but that's it. So the ship is not internally accessible as much as some other ones are. Not gonna, I mean, it's in the game is not really relevant to have that, but it's nice to have them. I kind of felt it would be nice to have them. In the end, nah, it just would take me a bit too long over time. But yeah, there are gonna be still minor tweaks after this video, and actually I had this video up like the last 2 days. Made it like 2 days ago, but I then actually went and listened to my own commentary, and it was I was apparently very sleepy because it turned into something of oddness, talking about bunnies and stuff, which doesn't make any sense at all, not even to me. But yeah, that was that. Also, a couple of things that I changed that are not gonna be in the videos are the secondary guns. I actually scaled them down from 121mm to 100mm, and also changed how what kind of shells the secondaries are firing. So it went from pure sabot to a mix of flak, sabot, and disruptors. Yeah, just to testing them out, see how that would work. I'm not completely sure about them, but it can't really hurt. I mean, the main firepower is the main firepower. It does the most of the job, so even if those secondaries don't prove themselves to be as much useful, we should not suffer that heavily. And I mean, I did test stuff, so currently it doesn't look like much of an issue there. The ship, yeah, it turned a bit out of size. I do think I would like to build something of the size of the mini BB, or at least try it out again, so we get a ship that is, you know, less, around 20,000 or less in size, but still has a relative big gun. So I'm most likely gonna utilize the railgun for that purpose. Well, at least, I mean, when I talk railguns, and a lot of people think, oh, this is really extreme fast shells and stuff like that. But to all those who actually went through the first episode do know that I built railguns just to make the shells fast enough on larger calibers guns. So it's like just an extra 100 or 150 meters a second that I get out of extra, and I use them like to compensate for smaller shell sizes with less propellant in them. So that I scale down the size of autoloaders and everything else, kinda, and of course that also scales down the size of the ship a bit, which all in the end kinda helps when you're playing the campaign. As the campaign, as I said, it's volume that is the problem end game, not the material. I mean, you simply don't really care all that much for the material end game. It's there, you have it in the millions, you don't really care. And so the volume, however, it is a problem. And yeah, as I said in the last time, you could have built a ship that would be just simply completely and utterly out of size, but I consider that to be a bit of an exploit, which I do not want to go into too much. I mean, one ship, like a flagship or something, building it like that and sending it to slaughter around the enemies is fine enough, especially against the Scarlet Dawn, because I find them just so annoying. But otherwise, you know, I'd rather be building like proper fleets, which then go and fight. And for that, the volume becomes the problem, because it's a volume limit of 50,000. I do hope that at some point that they allow us to increase that even further. I mean, my computer could most likely handle bigger battles up to, like, I don't know, 80,000 in volume or so. Most likely wouldn't be able to handle 100,000, that's for sure. Even at 50,000, depending on the ships that are in, it still will lag. So, you know, it's getting close there, but yeah, well, I think I could still run like something like 80,000. Just, and a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, with more powerful computers could potentially go to 100,000 and would not have that much of an issue. Well, not much of an issue. I mean, this game does consume a lot of CPU. And of course graphics up as well. It's not the most optimized. So it is a problem. It does lag. I just don't think it would be that much of an issue to allow people that do have more powerful PCs to increase the sizes even further, if they can. I mean, I don't know how playable would be past a point, but currently we're having what we're having. So we get to play with that. I mean, and the end result is, you know, in around 30,000 or so. Past that point, you only get one ship into the battle, not much more than one ship, and that of course could be a problem. The ship is right there at about 30,000, so it most likely in most battles will be the only thing that's gonna spawn in, and then we're gonna have to pretty much kill a couple of things to get some support. Of course, that is an issue. The ship is not weak, but could still, you know, get quite severely damaged and cost us material to repair. The shielding on it is, of course, double layered across most parts, so I don't think there's gonna be that much damage done to it. The torpedoes protection, it does have it. It does have smoke protection as well. That place it in a bit more exuberant than what it's seen in the video, but it's gonna be it's minor tweaks, Richie. And they're gonna still be minor tweaks, as I said. But yeah, hopefully we can get it in. And the next episode, I think it's gonna be a campaign type, if not some lazy WoW video yet again. Because, well, I'm lazy. So it fits. And yeah, otherwise I think that the ship gonna be fair potent enough. 380mm cannon guns are not the biggest, especially not for its size, but they're gonna be working. They can work fairly neatly. They are not, you know, the weakest or anything. They will still punch through the shielding and gonna punch through, you know, one side of the ship to another. That is something that pretty much large bore shape charge munitions does. It just goes through. And I did say that I would like to see slightly more diverse action there. Well, diverse. The problem is you're trying to take out, you know, the ship as quickly and as fast as possible. So you want a shell that will be capable of, you know, punching through a shield, doing damage to the hull, punching through the hull, and hitting then the vital components on the vessel. And shape charge does all of that. With other shells, you know, either they have problems passing through the shields, either they have problems punching through the armor, or they have, you know, kind of combination of it. I mean, they just are not as efficient. And the difference is pretty big in between, you know, shape charge ammunition can do and what other types of ammunition can do. So unfortunately, I think that's a bit off, and could love to see some the shape charge ammunition being scaled down a bit. I think that would be the proper solution, because currently I think it's like an exponential rate with the caliber of the gun. So that could be, you know, slightly fixed up, slightly changed, just a tiny bit, and it would, I think, help with the balance of the guns. Even though, I mean, then we could end up in a situation as we were long time ago, when, you know, very small guns that fired really fast were the ones that were just, you know, going for everything because reasons. And back then I definitely would not like to get back to that point, that's for sure. It was pretty hilarious when I started playing. Was literally Sabot, faster the shell was going, well, more penetration the shell had, easier time it had going through the shields as well. So it was pretty much a perfect, Sabot was pretty much perfect for going through shielding, going through armor, and of course also pretty much damaging the ship itself. So a lot of, and the Sabot doesn't benefit large guns all that much. So the most powerful ships in the game were the ones with very tiny guns, but a lot of them that fired a lot of Sabot rounds. That was just a bit ridiculous. I mean, they just went for everything, and there was literally one of those cases of, well, what the hell am I supposed to do about it? And there was no real protection against them, those type of shells. Now the shielding does stop faster flying shells, and Sabot is pretty much the fastest flying thing around. So having them negated to a point they are now does take a tiny bit away from them. They still have their uses as of, you know, shooting flyers and stuff like that, stuff that doesn't have any shielding. You know, they're still very effective against those. So I don't think they are that much worse. But the rest of the shells, I don't think they just offer enough. The shrapnel type is kind of useful on smaller weapons, but I mean the rest of them, disruptors, and I don't know. I'm really kind of would have to do a lot of testing, and I've done already a lot of testing, so I'm like always like I expect that they're gonna be, oh, it's gonna work better maybe this way, and then I test it and no, it just... Oh yeah, the ship does have one major problem, couple of major flaws. One of this is it's a bit flat-sided, of course, and this also doesn't help with the turning of the vessel. It does turn very slowly. And that's partially due to its shape, because it's very flat-sided ship. If it would be more oval and more V-shaped, then the ship would most likely be turning much faster. But I think it's gonna be sufficient. One other way to kind of make your ships turn faster is, of course, also placing weight. If you have a lot of weight in the center of the ship, but not that much to the bow and the stern, then the ship will have much easier time turning around. But if you are having a lot of weight front, back, and minimal weight to the center of the vessel, then of course the vessel will be struggling against its own inertia, and that means that it simply will not turn very quickly. How to build a ship with a lot of weight in the center? Ooh, that would be a bit difficult. I mean, you could place pretty much all your weapons very closely up together, even though that could potentially lead to certain explosive scenarios. And of course the ammo boxes could be placed in the center of the ship up as well. So maybe, I mean, it would work. I think it mostly work if you're using cram cannons, more or less, and using advanced cannons more like secondaries or something. Then that would most likely work much better, because cram cannons are not even close as explosive as the advanced cannons are. And the advanced cannons, when they go boom hardcore. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not really envisioning myself with a ship that would have a lot of weight front and back reduced. At least not something of this type. Of course, there are other ways. You could use jet engines or heli blades or something like that to help your ship move around, both side to side as also forward. I don't particularly like doing that. I kind of think, oh, just pure propulsion, that should be sufficient. And the ship, you know, in a straight line it does 16.2 meters a second, which will be pretty much the third or fourth fastest vessel that we're currently having. After the T6 DDs, they're faster, I think, but only by like 1 meter a second. And the tinies and the minis, they actually, no, the redesign of the tiny and the minis is actually somewhat faster. They're faster, something like 20 meters a second, which is not the greatest or anything. I mean, even with just propulsion, you can make ships go, I think, something like 35 meters a second, which is not bad at all. Of course, my fastest ship that was using pure propulsion was, I think, somewhere about 28, I think. It was pretty much something of the DDs in size, so it wasn't that big or powerful of a ship. But I did make, you know, ships that were over 30,000 in volume and still managed to pull over 20 meters a second. And in Season 1, I think all ships were going past 16 meters a second. Even the Vehicle 50, which was, I think, at 44,000 in volume. Even that thing pulled 16 meters a second as well. And most other ships were going relatively fast. Quite faster what they are in this season. Which does help, you know, positioning and stuff. That does help. And of course also avoiding shells. Shells. Crime cannons. Speed does kind of help there. Maneuverability also help, you know, that the ship turns fairly quickly, but yeah. I mean, Vehicle 50 couldn't turn quickly at all. That thing took a turning radius to a complete new level, but it was not a slow ship. So yeah, I'm really like tempted now to build another mini BB and of course a proper BB as well. Did say that the redesign for the submarine, or actually building up an actual submarine, because well, I've been delaying it and I don't really have any idea how to start with that one. And something that I never managed to do in the Season 1, and that is build a proper airship. I mean, the airship used in that season, I think there were 2 of them, and one of them was a redesign of a destroyer. Well, destroyer. Well, it was a destroyer class vessel, I would say it was. Even though it had 340mm guns at the end. But it was still, you know, the size of it was pretty much one of a destroyer, or around there. So the airship was literally a redesign of that thing, and that was the first airship, and also it was turned out to be quite efficient. Well, efficient. It was capable of taking down enemy ships and killing them. It wasn't very quick at doing that, but it done it. It was not a big issue with them at all. It's kind of I found quite surprising in the Season 1 that we actually managed to get the first ships that we have built. I mean, that was the Vehicle 10 got into the game at an episode 5, and I think it was all the way to the end of the Season 1 we were still using one and the same ship. Practically. I mean, they were significantly redesigned, had thicker armor plating, changed guns a bit around, but it was practically the same ship still, even though heavily modified. So that was like, I kind of find it surprising that the same design actually lasted that long, even though, I mean, the ship itself, the vehicle, which was then 13, was overweight. I mean, that ship was practically sinking on its own. Thankfully, it was built out of enough wood inside that it didn't sink, even if the hull did get punctured. So I was actually quite surprised there. Here in this season, I don't think any of the designs will held up past the white flares. Oh yeah, change the nose up a little bit. Well, kinda shorten it out. That's also where I managed to save some space on the ship. Well, volume. I actually saved something of over 1,500 volume, but I mean, it's not compromising the ship in any aspect. The armor is still as thick as it was before. I just had like 4 or 8 blocks there that they were forward of the guns before the sloping started. So I was like, I could shorten this out, and I did. And I think I could shorten out just a tiny bit more, but it would be a bit too much of a redesign and a bit too much of an effort for at this point. Maybe someday in the future. Maybe once I also start working on those sides a bit more of the ship, trying to make it all beer. But yeah, the ship, which was 100 and somewhere over 54, 56 inland, is now 148 inland. Yay! So we did shorten it out a little bit, but it's more. I really want to do it because of the volume size. I mean, every single 1,000 counts. Even though making the ship all beer, it won't really increase the size of the vessel, as it's I mean, to what it's gonna be of this. It's gonna have the same block size inside, so that's how the volume is calculated, by the block and volume of blocks that are in the ship. So it won't really influence it, or at least I don't think it will by much. It maybe gonna gain like 500 extra volume, but otherwise it should be okay. Anything else? Oh yeah, the guns, something that I will not... Oh yeah, no, I already said that. It's... Oh, forgetful there. But yeah, the ship is I think it's gonna be fair neat addition. Not the greatest one, but certainly usable. I did test it against pretty much anything on the godly design from the white flares, and it will be able to kill them one by one. If more of them spawns in, we're gonna have to see. Also, because in the tests I wasn't actually taking that much damage, that's gonna pretty much they then pretty much stand up to the campaign. You know, in campaign we're gonna face multiple opponents, we're most likely gonna get hit, we're most likely gonna get damaged, and we're gonna see how the ship stays in the water. That's maybe I should I'm gonna most likely have to try against a tougher opponent in a designer itself, to just see how the ship handles damage. You know, because sinking the ship because there were just a couple of holes in it is usually a very, very bad mojo, and don't want that to happen. Well, I mean, I did had a couple of tests where the ship took quite significant damage to the front and to the rear, and the ship didn't really sink. But a lot of the times when I checked over, I just see, oh, it's just armor. Just, you know, it punched the armor, it flooded the compartment, but it didn't really do much of any serious damage. So yeah, that's gonna be pretty much left for the oh shit, we're sinking kind of scenario in the campaign. Gonna make things a bit more interesting. But yeah, the nose redesigned, yeah, the redesigns does actually take quite a lot of time, because deleting, replacing blocks, and then the shielding. I replaced like 6 shields and it took me an hour and a half. Oh my god, I so much hate placing shielding up down. It truly is annoying, because if you're not doing it in a building mode, then every single time you try to get out of the shield, it throws you back into the first person view, and that's very annoying. But if you are trying to use the building mode, then you can't move your camera for some other reason, and that's really, really annoying. It truly is, at least to me. I mean, would love it if you could move your camera in a build mode, so that you could see where you're placing your shields, how they're gonna, you know, stack up and everything else. So I think that's something that they need to look over, at least. As it's at the moment, it's one of the most annoying things. I would say that it's the most annoying thing that you're doing after, when you're building a ship. You know, it just it literally, you know, 6 shields expanded all the energy I had. Truly, just I was completely out. And after that, I tried to do the first commentary. It's a good reason I was so I was making absolute no sense there. But yeah, the ship in the end actually turned out, I think, fairly decently. As I said, a bit flat-sided. We'll try to fix that a tiny bit, not too much. But otherwise the ship will go as it is into the campaign. The laser munition defense, it's actually acting very well. We'll put at the end of the video, I put like a test part up as well against a bit of a bulwark action and another opponent that we are currently facing in the campaign, because I don't really consider bulwarks to be, I mean, people always go, oh, why didn't you fight a bulwark and stuff like that, but the reality of situation is that bulwarks I don't consider that much of a threat, because it's very easy to disable them. As in overall, their guns are all like on top and everything else. They're truly somewhat of an obsolete design, and would like to see them being a bit fixed. Well, at least. But yeah, here it is. Here it's pretty much the finished up version of the ship. 148 in length, 21 wide, 38 tall height. And yeah, it does have 9 guns in 3 turrets, 380 millimeters, 6 secondaries, 100 millimeters, which fire varying types of ammunition. It has missiles at the back. One thing I didn't show, I don't think I showed, is the torpedoes being placed. I have this odd habit of pretty much putting torpedoes in somewhat of a turret at the bottom of the ship, and well, I done the exact same thing on this one, so you pretty much didn't miss much. But yeah, this is our fight against the bulwark. You may notice it's it's getting its guns shot out, and the bulwark shells partially getting stopped by the laser munition defense and partially getting bounced by shielding. So the shielding is working, laser munition defense is working fairly effectively. The electric engines that I put on and the batteries, they're there to pretty much compensate for when engine runs out of power, because it does that. When the laser munition defense and all the shieldings are going up, and at the same time there is like about 5,000 or so power gap in between the two, and the electrical engine actually work with that. I initially only placed them there to be more of a counterbalance weight, but because batteries are really heavy, but in the end they turned out fairly useful in the power supply regard up as well, even though they take, then after they start recharging, it's like 5% of the energy of the power of the engine is devoted to the batteries. Even though we could use less, it's not that important to recharge those batteries. I mean, in a longer battle it would most likely affect things, but one-on-one like here, it doesn't matter. Or at least I'm not thinking it matters all that much. But yeah, the ship is, as you can see, killing a bulwark with relative ease, really. Even though, I mean, this is a bit to our advantage, as we were actually, firstly I started like in 1,500 kilometers away, well, meters away, and then the ship was actually sailing away from the bulwark, and the bulwark is relatively slow, so it simply couldn't catch up, and we just kind of pummel it from afar. If the ship would be closer to one another, then we would most likely take significantly more damage, but yet again, it is a bulwark. And yeah, in overall, I think all the weaponries work, all the defenses are working. It's pretty much ready. But yeah, I really don't consider bulwarks to be too much of a threat, especially not in a campaign where you can kind of check them out by simply placing your ships a bit further away so that the crams on a bulwark lose some of their efficiency. Or better to say, the cram cannons at range have slightly bit of a problem trying to hit the target in the first place. So that is something of a downside, of course, for the cram cannons, and it's something why I don't like, you know, cram cannons for. It's that their shells are just so slow that are completely useless against flyers. They're completely seriously detrimented at range or against, you know, even faster ships. They have serious problems hitting them. So in overall, I don't really like using cram cannons all that much. Even though when the cram cannons hit, they can do quite a lot of damage. And it is, I mean, if you're building ship with cram cannons, nothing wrong as long as you find it, you know, that it's working for you. And against certain opponents, it works very well. I mean, the cram cannons do have that big, massive explosion, a ton of damage, and as the end result, they're really, really good for finishing damaged ships. Like, I mean, this bulwark here gonna still take us a minute or two to kill. With cram cannons, I think it would go a bit faster, just tiny bit faster, not by much, but you know, enough to be worth it. And of course, against fortifications and land bases and stuff like that, cram cannons are very efficient against those, simply due to, well, the target is not moving, so cram cannons can very easily hit it. Or at least, in most cases, they don't have problems hitting it. They are still, you know, they do have their own dispersion. But yeah, it's a bulwark. What can you do? It's sinking. Well, sinking. It's getting destroyed very slowly. That is this is where ship charge munition is actually quite efficient up as well, because in order to work properly, it requires some amount of high explosive behind it. So you usually put like 2 high explosive after ship charge warhead. And that creates quite a bit of an explosion that does quite a lot of damage to the enemy vessel, and as the end result, it's actually quite decent at finishing off damaged ships up as well. It's not that big of a deal for it. And as you can see here, our ship is practically undamaged. I mean, we lost a couple of blocks, but I think it was just couple of side turrets getting their guns blown off, so that's absolute nothing to worry about, at least not against, you know, a bulwark. And the Onyx Watch in general, a trebuchet could potentially do some damage to us. Well, actually it could do quite a lot of damage to us, but trebuchets do have fairly weak shielding. They tend to blow up pretty quickly, those things, so I'm not that concerned about it. And yeah, well, let's try to see how it works against something that is more of a current matchup. I think I went with the perforator. No, I went with the dissector. No, dissector. Oh, no, I'm not gonna remember it, and I'm too lazy to check. But it's that thing that has the bigger guns, but it's slightly smaller in volume compared to the perforator. And I think it's called the desecrator or something like that. And as you can see, the 380mm guns just instantly ripped the guns off the ship. When the shells decide to shoot straight into the enemy ship like this, yeah, they are doing a lot of damage, a lot of internal damage. Those shape charge munition is going through, it is doing its job. It is, however, quite annoying when the ships like try to shoot something that's completely irrelevant on the enemy vessel. That's like I'm losing my temper every single time I see it. But as you can see, the white flares, I mean, it did spawn facing away from us, and that was a bit of a problem. I mean, this ship has 3 turrets facing forward and 2 turrets facing backwards, so it pretty much is best when it's engaging its enemies full broadside, but in this case we were behind it. Kind of unlucky spawn for it, and the end result, the big 2 turrets at the back were practically instantly destroyed, and the front turrets can't turn enough to actually assist. So the ship is pretty much sinking on its own already, and there are missiles hitting it and torpedoes, which I did find. I'm not completely sure, but I think the torpedoes got a bit of a speed upgrade past the last patch, or at least I think they did, because when I was testing it I was getting like the previously torpedoes that were doing 30 meters a second or so are now doing 50 meters a second for some odd reasoning, and I'm not completely sure why. I mean, they were designed to be fast, but you know, they were designed to do 30 meters a second, not 50. So that was slightly bit of a surprise. I'm not completely sure what's going on there. We'll have to check it if something in the patch notes or something like that may indicate that they have got a valuable speed increase. But otherwise, this is gonna be the end of this video. The ship is performing nicely. As I said, a bit slow on a turn, but that being its major weakness, not really. A bit too big. Yeah, that's true. But I think it looks relatively nice, somewhat flat-sided, and it is. The guns are working. The weaponry on it, it's working. The defenses are also fairly decent. So in overall, see ya.